7 years ago, the city of Chicago initiated a citywide recycling program. Since then, 600,000 households have been incorporated into the recycling program. However, Chicago has one of the lowest recycling rates of the nation, only recycling a mere 9% of the city's waste, while the national average recycling rate sits at 34.7%. Furthermore, an estimated 6.3 billion tons of unrecycled waste is suspected to pollute the environment worldwide currently despite current worldwide efforts. Similarly, in Whitney, some of these problems can be seen manifesting despite the establishment of student-led recycling program.
So my name's Nina, and I'm in charge of recycling at Whitney Young, and we call ourselves the Recycling Ninjas because Mr. Katz thinks it's funny. But the premise is that we go into classrooms quietly and we take out the recycling bins like ninjas. I don't know. And we are in charge of taking out the recycling in the entirety of the school. So custodians, contrary to popular belief, and CPS don't recycle. Pretty much all the recycling in the building is student run. And I guess I'm the top of the system.
Okay, so we've noticed that there are some new blue recycling bins in Red and Blue House. What was the process of setting up those bins?
So basically, those bins were put by students again because the system is entirely student run. And so we put them there, we ordered them, and we put them in the houses in hopes people would recycle. We actually have not gotten good responses, so we had to remove them because people were putting food in there and other things that just are not recyclable. So we're still trying to figure out how to get people in the houses to not throw trash in the blue bins that are clearly marked with labeling guides on the bins. But so we just put them in there. I think starting after winter break was when we implemented that system.
How does Whitney Young's recycling compare to any other schools, if you know?
I think we do better than other schools just because, like I said, CPS doesn't actually pay for recycling. So Whitney Young pays for a private company to recycle. It's not something that CPS pays for and gives us money for. And so I think most other schools actually don't have a recycling system. And if they have the blue bins that say we recycle, CPS actually, custodians are just mandated to throw that in the trash. So I would say better, but I don't have specific evidence, but just my guess.
What do you think we can do as a school to improve recycling at the school?
I think just building better practices. One of the things that people ask me all the time is what can I recycle and what can go in the bins? And it's about conditioning. If you are unsure, the number one rule is throw it out, because ultimately if you throw something that is not recyclable, the recycling becomes contaminated and all of that recycling is wasted. And they have to throw it out. And so if you don't know, throw it out. That's the number one thing I tell people. If not, read, because there's plenty of literature around the school. There's stuff in the weekly that we send out, and reminders. And I just wish people would read. So pay attention to what's around you. And even on the bins, actually, a lot of the bins are labeled with what can go in there and what can't. So, yeah.
How does the recycling process actually help with combating climate change?
I think it's a little bit indirect, but reduce, reuse, recycle, kind of those three things help with the less waste. And so less needs to be produced. And so like carbon emissions that come from like producing plastics and other things that can be recycled, like glass, ultimately we don't need to use as many, because like if we recycle materials, obviously we don't have to reproduce them, but it just comes from creating less waste overall. So it's a little bit of an indirect, but it's still really important.
Great. Is there anything else you would like to say to the audience who would hopefully be watching this in the foreseeable future?
Just listen to me and recycle, because it's really, really frustrating when people throw things in the recycling bin and I have to pick them out with my hands that are recyclable. Also, the diverse learners have to recycle. So if you care at all about diverse learning, they are also helping us with the recycling system. And so like they also have to pick up your trash, which is just not cool. So 2 takeaways. 1, if you're not sure, throw it in the trash and read literature. 2, if you're interested in becoming a recycling volunteer, please contact me, because we're always looking for people to help us recycle.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem.
During our interview with Nina, we discovered that the custodians in our school don't do any of the recycling. Everything is student run. This reflects a bigger problem of how everyone doesn't put in effort of recycling. Chicago is one of the worst recycling cities, and throughout the country, the government has not instated recycling facilities that process all plastic. We all can do better. We need to be educated of what can be recycled and what cannot.